It was the morning of my birthday, but it didn't feel like one I had made no plans. No party, no dinner reservation, no group of friends waiting to celebrate. It was just me in the quiet of my apartment, trying to convince myself that this was okay, that I didn't need any grand celebration or attention. I didn't need anyone to remind me that I was getting older. I decided to spend the day outdoors, so I packed a small picnic and headed to the park nearby. It wasn't the kind of park that was full of people, but rather one of those quiet spots tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The kind of park where the trees were tall and the benches offered an escape from the noise. Sitting alone on a bench, I stared at the peaceful scene around me. The birds were chirping, and the leaves rustled in the gentle breeze. It should have been peaceful, but all I could feel was the emptiness surrounding me. I glanced at the other people in the park, couples, families, friends, laughing, chatting, enjoying their time together. And there I was with my small cake and a solitary candle flickering in the breeze, trying to make the best of it. It was hard not to think about the years that had passed and the people who had come and gone. My friends, most of whom had their own lives and families now, and the romantic relationships that had ended without any real closure. Sometimes I wondered if I was meant to be alone, if this was the way things were going to be from now on. The minutes ticked by slowly. The cake remained untouched, its frosting beginning to melt under the warm sun. I thought about how much I used to love birthdays when I was younger, how they were filled with laughter, surprises, and love. But as the years went on, those moments became fewer and farther between birthdays. Once a symbol of joy had become another reminder of how things had changed. I thought to myself, is this what my life has come to? A quiet, forgotten birthday in a park. The thought was almost unbearable. But as I sat there, the weight of loneliness heavy in my chest, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something I was missing. Maybe it was just the feeling that after everything I was still waiting for something, waiting for a sign, for a call, for someone to remember me on my special day. That's when my phone buzzed. The buzz from my phone startled me. For a moment I just stared at it, unsure whether I should even bother answering. After all who could possibly be calling me today, everyone else had their own lives, their own plans. I thought about ignoring the call, but something told me I should pick it up. It might be just what I needed, even if I didn't know it yet. I glanced at the screen and my heart skipped a beat. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. Mark. My hands trembled slightly as I slid my finger across the screen to answer. I hadn't heard from him in at least 4 years. Mark and I had been close friends throughout college, sharing late-night talks, countless adventures, and more than our fair share of ridiculous moments. But as life does, we drifted apart after graduation. He moved to another city for work, and I stayed behind trying to piece my life together after some personal setbacks. We'd occasionally texted, but those messages became fewer and farther between. Eventually, we stopped trying altogether. Anna, hey, it's Mark. His voice sounded just as I remembered it, warm, familiar, full of energy. I paused, uncertain. Mark, wow, it's been forever. What's up? I know, I've been terrible at staying in touch. But I'm actually in town today and I thought I'd give you a call. I realized today's your birthday, and I couldn't let that pass without reaching out. Do you have any plans? Because if not, I'd love to meet up. I'm nearby. We could grab a drink or just hang out like old times. I was taken aback. My mind raced trying to process what was happening. Mark, my old friend, out of nowhere, calling me on my birthday, asking me to meet up. It was such a stark contrast to the lonely day I was having. I hadn't even expected anyone to remember, let alone invite me to celebrate. I felt a wave of emotion that I hadn't expected. I had spent the morning convincing myself that I didn't need anyone, that I was perfectly fine on my own. And here was Mark casually offering me something I hadn't realized I'd been craving: connection. I don't know what to say. I stammered, half laughing. This is really unexpected. I figured it might be, but trust me, I wouldn't be calling if I didn't mean it. It's your birthday, Anna. You shouldn't spend it alone. I'm serious. Just say yes, and I'll come to you. I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. The idea of seeing Mark again, of catching up after so many years, suddenly seemed like the perfect remedy for the emptiness I'd been feeling all morning. Okay, sure. Why not? Let's meet up. I could hear the grin in his voice. Great. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'll text you when I'm close. The moment I hung up, I sat there for a few seconds, just letting the words sink in. Mark, of all people, had called me. And just like that, my whole perspective on the day shifted. What had started as a quiet, lonely birthday now felt like the beginning of something new. The excitement of reconnecting with an old friend bubbled up inside me, pushing aside the remnants of melancholy that had clouded my mind. I looked at the small cake I had brought with me, sitting untouched on the bench. It no longer felt like a symbol of loneliness. In that moment, it felt like a prelude to something better, something I hadn't anticipated. I stood up, stretching my legs, feeling a renewed sense of energy that I hadn't realized I was missing. Maybe it wasn't just about the birthday. Maybe it was about the people who came into our lives, the ones who cared enough to reach out when we needed them most. And just when I thought I couldn't feel more grateful for this unexpected turn of events, my phone buzzed again. Mark had sent me a text. I'm on my way. Can't wait to catch up. I smiled to myself. This day, which had started with nothing but solitude, was about to turn into something far more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. 20 minutes later, as I stood by the park entrance, I spotted Mark from a distance. He hadn't changed much, still that familiar, easygoing smile, the same energy in his steps. It was almost surreal seeing him after so many years. He waved when he saw me, his hand high in the air, and the moment our eyes met, I felt a surge of warmth that I hadn't known I was missing. "Anna," he called, rushing over with a grin that immediately put me at ease. "You look exactly the same, but way more beautiful than I remember." I laughed, both touched and a bit embarrassed. "I think you're just being kind." "It's been a long time, Mark. I can't believe you remembered my birthday." "Well, I might have forgotten some birthdays in the past," he chuckled, "but today just felt like the right time to reach out. I'm really glad I did. Let's go somewhere quiet and talk. I have a feeling we've got a lot to catch up on." As we walked together, the world around us seemed to fade away. The park, the crowd, the city noise, everything just felt distant. It was as though time had rewound to the days when we used to spend hours chatting about everything and nothing at all. We reached a small cafe nearby, a cozy spot I used to love. Mark had already picked it out, knowing it would be quiet enough for us to talk without interruption. The familiarity of the place made the whole situation feel even more special. It was like stepping back in time into a chapter of my life that I hadn't realized I missed so much. We sat down at a table by the window, the afternoon light spilling across the wooden floor. Mark ordered coffee for both of us, and I tried to take in the moment, still unsure whether this was all really happening. It felt like a dream, the kind where everything is just right. "So how have you been?" Mark asked, leaning back in his chair. "I've been wondering about you." I took a deep breath, not sure where to start. There had been so many ups and downs in the years since we last spoke, but I felt comfortable enough with him to open up, to tell him how life hadn't exactly gone as planned, how I had struggled to find my footing in the world after graduation, and how much I had lost touch with people who once mattered. "I guess I've been okay," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "A lot has happened, some good, some not so good." Mark listened quietly, nodding along, his gaze steady and understanding. When I finished, he spoke again, his voice warm and reassuring. "I get it. Life can really throw you some curveballs. But you're here now, right? And we're having coffee together. It's crazy to think about how long it's been. But I'm really glad we're doing this." There was something about the way he said it, something so genuine that made me feel as though I wasn't alone in this moment. I had spent so much of the day trying to convince myself that being by myself on my birthday was fine, that I didn't need anyone. But here I was with Mark having a conversation like no time had passed at all. We started talking about our lives, the little things and the big things. He told me about his job, his travels, and the people he had met along the way. It was fascinating to hear about his experiences, but it was even more fascinating to realize how much I had missed this connection. The way we could talk about anything, no judgment, no time wasted. As the conversation flowed, I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying. The loneliness from earlier in the day seemed to melt away, replaced by the warmth of friendship, of shared memories, and of a bond that hadn't been broken despite the years apart. After a while, Mark leaned forward, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "You know, I'm really glad you agreed to meet up today. I know it might have been a little last minute, but I couldn't let you spend your birthday alone." I smiled softly, feeling a lump in my throat. "It means more to me than you know. Honestly, I didn't think anyone would even remember today." Mark shook his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. "That's ridiculous. You matter. Don't ever doubt that." His words, simple but sincere, hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear them, how much I had been doubting my worth without even realizing it. I had been so wrapped up in the idea of being alone and feeling like I had lost touch with the people who mattered that I had forgotten the value of true friendship. As we continued to talk, the hours flew by. The cafe started to empty out, but neither of us seemed to notice. We were lost in conversation in the comfort of a friendship that felt like no time had passed at all. I glanced at the clock, and before I knew it, the day had turned into evening. I realized I hadn't felt so alive in a long time. It wasn't just about the birthday. It was about the connection. It was about the people who truly cared, who showed up when it mattered most. It was about rediscovering something I had nearly forgotten. When the bill came, Mark insisted on paying. I protested, but he simply laughed and shook his head. "Birthday girl's treat," he said with a wink. As we walked out of the cafe together, I felt lighter than I had all day. Maybe birthdays weren't about big parties or extravagant gifts. Maybe they were just about the people who make us feel seen, heard, and loved. And today I had been reminded that even in my moments of loneliness, there were people in my life who would always be there when I needed them most. And that was worth celebrating. As I walked alongside Mark, the evening sun casting a soft glow on the city streets, I couldn't help but reflect on how unexpectedly wonderful this day had turned out. The loneliness I had felt in the morning, the quiet birthday I had anticipated now seemed so distant, almost like a different life. It was as if the universe had conspired to show me something beautiful, that even in moments of solitude there are always unexpected joys waiting to be discovered. Mark and I continued to chat as we strolled through the park, the same park where we had spent countless afternoons together years ago. The air was cool now, the park lit by the warm orange light of the street lamps, and the world seemed so much more vibrant than it had a few hours before. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly connected to someone not just by words, but by the shared memories that had brought us back together. "I'm really glad we did this," Mark said, breaking the comfortable silence. His voice was thoughtful and there was a smile in his tone. "You know, I don't think I've realized how much I missed this, how much I missed us." I looked at him, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "I feel the same way. I didn't realize how much I needed this, how much I missed you until today." We stopped for a moment, standing under the glow of a nearby streetlight. Mark gave me a friendly yet sincere look. "Life gets so busy, you know. People get caught up and they forget to reach out. I'm glad I didn't let that happen." This time, I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. He was right. Life does get busy. People move jobs, take over, and sometimes you don't even notice that you've drifted away from the people who mattered most. But today I realize that friendships don't just disappear. They don't fade with time. They simply wait for you to rediscover them. As we reached the edge of the park, we stood for a moment, taking in the view of the city skyline. The lights of the buildings twinkled in the distance, and I felt a deep sense of peace that had been absent from my day earlier. I had come into this day thinking it was going to be just another ordinary lonely birthday. But now it was one I would always remember, not because of the cake I had brought to the park or the presents I never received, but because of the gift of friendship that had come when I least expected it. "It's funny," I said quietly, glancing at Mark. "I thought I was going to spend this birthday alone. But now I realize that this was exactly what I needed. A reminder that the people who truly matter never really leave." Mark smiled, his eyes kind as he nodded in agreement. "You're never really alone, Anna. You've got me. You've got all of us. And that's something worth celebrating." Those words, simple but profound, stuck with me. It wasn't the external celebrations that made a day special. It wasn't the grand gestures or the big events. It was the quiet moments, the connections, the people who show up when you least expect them to. It was the friendships that had stood the test of time, that no matter how much distance had come between them, always had the ability to pick up right where they left off. As Mark and I said our goodbyes a little while later, I felt a warmth in my chest. It wasn't just the joy of seeing an old friend again, but the reassurance that I wasn't truly alone. I had people in my life, friends, loved ones, and the memories of all those who had shaped me into who I was today. And sometimes that's all you need to realize, that happiness isn't a destination, but a collection of moments like this one that remind you you're never far from the things that matter most. And as I headed home that night, the weight of the day lifted completely. It wasn't just about the celebration or the fact that Mark had called me. It was about the reminder that joy comes in unexpected forms, in small but meaningful ways. I would never look at birthdays the same way again. It wasn't the cake or the gifts that defined it, but the people we share them with, the friends who remind us of our worth, and the simple joy of being remembered. I spent my birthday alone in the park until an old friend called me to celebrate.